The harsh scent of ozone and damp concrete filled my nostrils as I sprinted down the worn stairs of the 42nd Street station. Behind me, heavy footsteps echoed against the tiled walls, a chaotic rhythm that matched the frantic pounding of my own heart. I didn't dare look back. I knew who was chasing me. I knew the cold, furious blue eyes that were burning into my back, the hands that had left bruises on my arms just days ago. Brandon wasn't letting me go. He never let anything go. It was past midnight, and the station was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the daytime chaos of Times Square above. The usual sea of tourists and commuters had thinned to a few scattered souls. A man sleeping on a bench, a couple arguing in hushed tones near the turnstiles, and a solitary figure in a dark suit standing far down the platform. I fumbled with my Metro card, my hands shaking so violently I dropped it twice before finally swiping it through. The beep of the turnstile sounded like a gunshot in the empty station. I pushed through, stumbling onto the platform just as I heard Brandon's voice boom from the stairwell. "Megan, you can't just walk away from me." His voice was a mix of rage and that terrifying, manipulative calm he used to control me for 2 years. I moved faster, my sneakers squeaking on the grimy floor, scanning for an exit, a police officer, anyone. But the platform was desolate. The digital sign overhead flickered, promising a train in 2 minutes. 2 minutes might as well have been 2 years. I retreated toward the far end of the platform, away from the entrance, trying to put as much distance between us as possible. I wasn't just running from a bad breakup. I was running from a man who had systematically dismantled my life, isolating me from my family in Oregon, convincing my friends I was unstable, and making me doubt my own sanity. 6 months ago, I had finally found the courage to leave. I thought I was free. But tonight, after a double shift at the hospital, he was there waiting by the staff exit, smiling like nothing had happened, holding flowers that looked more like a threat than a gift. "Don't make a scene, Meg," Brandon hissed, emerging onto the platform. He spotted me instantly, his expression darkening. He walked toward me with purpose, ignoring the few other people around. "We just need to talk." "Why are you being so difficult?" "Stay away from me, Brandon," I warned, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound strong. I backed up until my heels were inches from the yellow safety strip. The dark tunnel gaped behind me, a black maw waiting to swallow the light. "I have a restraining order." "You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of me." He laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "A piece of paper? You think that stops me?" "I love you, Megan. I'm trying to save us." He lunged before I could react. His hand clamped around my upper arm, fingers digging into the tender flesh where a bruise from his last affectionate grip was still fading. I cried out, trying to wrench free, but he was stronger, fueled by an obsessive adrenaline that terrified me. "Let go of me," I screamed, hoping to attract attention. The sleeping man on the bench didn't stir. The arguing couple had disappeared. "Stop it," Brandon growled, yanking me closer. "You're hysterical. You need me to take care of you. You can't function on your own. Look at you, a mess." I said let go. I swung my heavy tote bag, hitting him squarely in the chest. It wasn't enough to hurt him, but it was enough to surprise him. He stumbled back a step, his grip loosening just enough for me to tear my arm away. But the momentum was wrong. The platform was slick from the humidity and spilled drinks. Brandon, off balance and furious, lashed out, shoving me hard. "You ungrateful The shove sent me stumbling backward. My feet tangled. The world tilted violently. One moment I was standing on the concrete. The next, I was falling into the void. I hit the tracks hard. Pain exploded in my knee and shoulder, knocking the wind out of me. The steel rail bit into my side, cold and unforgiving. For a second, I just lay there, stunned, staring up at the dirty, fluorescent lights of the station ceiling, and Brandon's horrified face peering over the edge. Then the ground began to vibrate. A low rumble echoed from the tunnel, growing louder with every heartbeat. 2 bright lights pierced the darkness, rounding the curve in the distance. The train. It was coming. "Oh my God," Brandon whispered, his face pale. He took a step back. He didn't reach for me. He didn't call for help. He looked at the oncoming train, then at me, and terror. Selfish, pure terror filled his eyes. He turned and ran. I tried to scramble up, but my knee buckled. Panic seized my throat, choking me. The roar of the train was deafening now, the screech of metal on metal filling the air. I was going to die here, in a dirty subway tunnel, alone, because of a man who claimed to love me. Suddenly, a blur of motion dropped from the platform above. A dark figure landed on the tracks beside me with heavy, controlled impact. I barely had time to register the expensive suit, the flash of a gold watch, before strong hands grabbed me. "Move!" a deep voice commanded, cutting through the noise of the approaching train. He didn't ask. He didn't hesitate. He hauled me up as if I weighed nothing, his grip firm and assured. The train horn blasted, a deafening scream that vibrated in my bones. The lights were blinding now, illuminating the dust motes in the air, the grime on the walls, and the intense focus in the stranger's dark eyes. He didn't try to climb back up the platform. There wasn't time. Instead, he shoved me into the narrow crawl space beneath the platform overhang, a recessed alcove designed for maintenance workers or desperate survivors. He threw his body over mine, shielding me, pressing me against the cold, damp concrete wall. The train roared past inches from us. The wind generated by its speed whipped at my hair and clothes, a violent, hot gust that smelled of sparks and burning rubber. The noise was a physical assault, drowning out every thought, every fear. I squeezed my eyes shut, burying my face in the stranger's chest. He smelled of cedarwood, expensive cologne, and something metallic. Gunpowder. His heart beat steadily against my ear, a calm, rhythmic thud that completely contradicted the chaos around us. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably less than 30 seconds before the train screeched to a halt at the station, blocking us from view but safe from its wheels. The stranger didn't move immediately. He held me there, his body a protective cage, waiting until the mechanical hiss of the doors opening signaled that the train was stationary. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was low, rough like gravel, but devoid of the panic I felt. I pulled back slightly, looking up at him in the dim light of the alcove. He was striking. Sharp jawline, hair as dark as the tunnel around us, and eyes that seemed to absorb the limited light. He didn't look like a commuter. He didn't look like a cop. He looked dangerous, but right now, he was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. "My knee," I managed to whisper, my voice cracking. I think I twisted it." He nodded once, efficiently assessing the situation. "We need to get out of here before the police swarm the place. Can you stand?" "I don't know," I said honestly. Why did you do that? You could have died." "But I didn't," he replied simply. He shifted, checking the gap between the train and the platform edge. "And neither did you. Now hold on to me." He helped me maneuver out of the alcove. The train was stopped. Passengers were disembarking above, oblivious to the near-death drama that had just played out beneath their feet. We moved toward the rear of the train where the gap was wider. He lifted me effortlessly onto the platform, then vaulted up after me with a grace that spoke of immense physical strength. Chaos was starting to ripple through the station. Someone had seen me fall. People were shouting, pointing toward the tracks further up. "He pushed her!" a woman screamed from somewhere near the stairs. "I saw a man running." "We're leaving," the stranger said, his hand firm on my lower back, guiding me away from the gathering crowd, toward a service exit I hadn't even noticed before. "Wait," I protested weakly, limping. "The police. I have to tell them." "Tell them what?" he countered, his tone hard but not unkind. "That your boyfriend pushed you? By the time they file a report, he'll be gone. And you need a doctor, not a statement form." "How did you know he was my boyfriend?" I asked, a chill running down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold dampness of my clothes. He didn't answer. He pushed open the heavy metal door, leading us into a maintenance corridor that smelled of rust and old oil. We emerged onto a side street, far from the main entrance where sirens were already wailing. A sleek black SUV was idling at the curb, its engine purring softly. A large man in a dark suit stepped out immediately, opening the rear door. "Boss," the driver said, his eyes widening slightly as he took in our disheveled appearance. Is everything? Drive, Joseph, the stranger ordered, helping me into the back seat. We need to get to the safe house and call Dr. Eris. Tell him to meet us there. Safe house? I repeated, panic flaring again as I sank into the plush leather seat. Wait, I'm not going anywhere with you. I don't even know who you are. The stranger climbed in beside me as the car pulled away from the curb, merging smoothly into the late-night traffic. He turned to look at me, and for the first time, I saw something soften in those intense dark eyes. Not pity, but something closer to recognition. I'm Nicholas, he said. And right now, Megan, I'm the only safe option you have. I stared at him, my mouth slightly open. How do you know my name? Nicholas reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a pristine white handkerchief, handing it to me to wipe the grime from my face. I make it my business to know the names of people who fall onto subway tracks in front of me. It's a bad habit. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. But as the adrenaline crashed and exhaustion washed over me, I realized I didn't have the energy to fight him. Brandon was out there. The police would just take a statement and send me home, to the apartment Brandon had a key to, despite the locks I'd changed 3 times. This stranger, this Nicholas, had jumped in front of a train for me. Thank you, I whispered, clutching the handkerchief. You saved my life. Yes, Nicholas said, looking out the tinted window as the city lights blurred past. Now let's make sure it stays saved. The car sped north, leaving the chaos of 42nd Street behind. I leaned my head back against the seat, closing my eyes. My knee throbbed, my clothes were ruined, and I was in a car with a man who radiated power and danger. But for the first time in months, as we put distance between me and the station, I didn't feel like prey. I felt protected, and that was a terrifying thought in itself. The silence in the car was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Joseph, the driver, glanced at me in the rearview mirror occasionally, but said nothing. Nicholas was busy on his phone, typing rapid messages, his brow furrowed. I took the opportunity to study him covertly. His suit was ruined, grease stains on the expensive fabric, dust coating the shoulders. He had a scrape on his jaw that was bleeding sluggishly. You're bleeding, I said, the nurse in me taking over automatically. He touched his jaw, looking surprised to find blood on his fingers. It's nothing. It's not nothing. It needs to be cleaned or it will get infected. Subways are petri dishes. A corner of his mouth quirked up, almost a smile. I'll survive, Nurse Collins. Collins? I stiffened. Okay, seriously. Who are you? You know my first name, my last name, my profession. Are you stalking me too? Nicholas sighed, putting his phone away. He turned his full attention to me, and the intensity of his gaze made me want to shrink back into the seat. I was at the station meeting an associate. I saw you running. I saw him chasing you. I saw the argument. When you fell, I reacted. As for your name, he gestured to the ID badge still clipped to my scrub top, which was miraculously still there. It's right on your chest. I looked down, feeling heat rush to my cheeks. Oh, I'm not stalking you, Megan, he said, his voice serious again. But I saw the look on that man's face. He didn't push you by accident, and he didn't run because he was scared of the police. He ran because he failed. Failed to what? To kill you, Nicholas said bluntly. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering. He's my ex. He has issues, but he's not a murderer. He just lost control. Men like that don't lose control, Nicholas corrected darkly. They exert it. And when they can't, they eliminate the problem. You are the problem he can't solve. I wanted to argue, to defend the man I had once loved, or at least the version of him I thought existed. But the memory of Brandon's face as he watched me fall, the cold, selfish relief before the terror set in, stopped me. Nicholas was right. Brandon had looked at me on those tracks and made a choice not to help. Where are we going? I asked, changing the subject. A place where he can't find you, Nicholas said. You can stay there tonight. Tomorrow we'll decide what to do. I have a shift tomorrow afternoon, I said automatically. I can't miss work. You just fell onto a subway track. Nicholas pointed out dryly. "I think you can call in sick. Besides, do you really think it's wise to walk out of that hospital alone tomorrow?" He had a point. Brandon knew my schedule. He knew my route. He knew everything. The car slowed, turning into the underground garage of a sleek residential building in the Upper East Side. It wasn't the kind of place regular people lived. It was a fortress of glass and steel, radiating exclusivity. Joseph parked the car and immediately came around to open my door. "Can you walk, miss?" Joseph asked, his voice gravelly but polite. "I think so," I said, grimacing as I put weight on my injured leg. Nicholas was there instantly, offering his arm for support. "Lean on me," he instructed. We took a private elevator straight up to the penthouse. The doors opened into an apartment that looked more like a museum than a home. Minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the park. Art that probably cost more than my entire student loan debt. It was cold, beautiful, and impersonal. "Joseph, get the first aid kit and some ice," Nicholas ordered, guiding me to a massive gray sofa. "And call the doctor again. Tell him 10 minutes. "Yes, boss," Joseph said, disappearing into another room. Boss. The word hung in the air. People didn't call their employers boss in that tone unless they were in a very specific line of work. I looked at Nicholas, really looked at him, the authority he wore like a second skin, the quick violence of his rescue, the shadowed, guarded nature of his movements. "You're not a businessman, are you?" I asked quietly. Nicholas poured a glass of water from a crystal pitcher and handed it to me. "I am. I just operate in markets that require assertiveness. Mafia." The word slipped out before I could stop it. He paused, glass halfway to his own lips. He didn't deny it. He didn't laugh. He just looked at me with that unreadable expression. "Does it matter right now?" "It might," I said, my hand tightening around the glass. "If I traded one dangerous man for another." Nicholas set his glass down with a deliberate clink. He leaned forward, bracing his hands on his knees, bringing his face level with mine. "Let me be clear, Megan. I am a dangerous man. I have done things that would make your nightmares seem pleasant, but I do not hurt women, and I do not push people onto train tracks. You are safe here, safer than anywhere else in this city." There was a conviction in his voice that made my breath catch. I searched his eyes for any sign of deception, but all I found was a steely resolve. "Okay," I whispered, surprising myself. "Okay." Joseph returned with a medical kit and a bag of ice. Nicholas took them, kneeling on the floor in front of me. He rolled up the damp pant leg of my scrubs with surprisingly gentle hands. My knee was swollen and bruising rapidly, an ugly purple welt forming against the pale skin. "This is going to be painful tomorrow," he murmured, applying the ice. I hissed at the cold contact. "Sorry. It's fine," I said through gritted teeth. "I'm a nurse, remember? I know the drill." He looked up at me, his dark eyes searching my face. "You're taking this remarkably well. Most people would be hysterical. I'm hysterical on the inside," I admitted. "On the outside, I'm just tired. I've been running for so long, Nicholas. I'm just really tired." "Then rest," he said softly. "You don't have to run tonight." For the first time in 2 years, I believed it. As I sat there in the penthouse of a mafia boss, ice on my knee and the city lights twinkling below, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know what Nicholas Versiani wanted from me, or why he had risked his life to save a stranger. But I knew one thing. Brandon Foster hadn't won tonight. And with this man standing between us, maybe, just maybe, he never would again. Nicholas Versiani was not a man who waited for answers. He was a man who orchestrated them. The moment he had finished wrapping my knee with the precision of someone who had seen far worse injuries than a tumble onto subway tracks, he had disappeared into the hallway of the penthouse, his voice low and urgent as he spoke rapid-fire Italian into his phone. I was left alone on the expansive gray sofa, clutching the rapidly warming ice pack to my throbbing knee, the silence of the apartment pressing in on me. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was heavy, charged with the kinetic energy of a place where decisions were made that altered lives. My clothes, scrubs damp with tunnel water and grime. Felt like a second skin I desperately needed to shed. I looked around the room, taking in details I had been too shell-shocked to process minutes ago. No personal photos, no clutter. The art on the walls was abstract, violent slashes of red and black that seemed to vibrate with restrained aggression. It was a fortress, not a home, and I was currently the guest of honor, or perhaps the prisoner of circumstance. The sound of the front door opening made me jump, my pulse spiking instantly. I braced myself, half expecting Brandon to somehow burst through, defying logic and geography. But it wasn't my ex. A short, balding man with a leather doctor's bag bustled in, followed closely by Joseph, the driver who looked like he could bench press a small car. "Dr. Eris," Nicholas announced, stepping back into the room from the shadows where he had been watching. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "For you, Nicholas?" "Always." The doctor didn't look at me at first. His eyes scanned Nicholas, lingering on the dried blood on his jaw. "You're hurt. Not me," Nicholas said, gesturing toward the sofa. "Her." Dr. Eris turned, his professional gaze sweeping over me. He wasn't intimidated by the surroundings or the man commanding them. He moved with the efficient brusqueness of someone who had treated gunshot wounds in back rooms as often as he treated flu in clinics. "Let's see the damage. I'm Dr. Eris. You are?" "Megan," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Megan Collins. I'm a nurse." "A nurse," Dr. Eris repeated, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as he knelt beside me. He gently removed the ice pack. "Then you know the drill." "Range of motion, pain level. 6 out of 10, I replied automatically. "Flexion is limited. I think it's just a severe contusion, maybe a strain. Ligaments feel intact, but I haven't tried to stand on it fully since the station." He nodded, probing the swollen joint with skilled fingers. I winced, but didn't pull away. "You're lucky. No crepitus. Swelling is significant, but the patella is stable. You'll need rest, elevation, and anti-inflammatories. I can give you a stronger analgesic if you need it." "I need to be clear-headed," I said quickly. "Just ibuprofen is fine." Nicholas, who had been leaning against the far wall with his arms crossed, spoke up. "Check her shoulder and her side. She hit the rail hard." I looked at him, surprised he had noticed the wince I tried to hide when I shifted. He was watching everything, cataloging every micro-expression. It was unnerving. It was also protective. Dr. Eris moved efficiently, checking my shoulder, bruised, not dislocated, and my ribs, tender, likely bruised, but expanding symmetrically. When he was finished, he stood and snapped his bag shut. "She's been through a trauma, Nicholas. Physical and psychological. She needs sleep, not interrogation. She'll get rest," Nicholas promised, walking the doctor to the door. They exchanged a few words in hushed tones. I caught "police" and "quiet" before the doctor left. When Nicholas returned, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The medical emergency was over. The reality of the situation was settling in. He walked over to a sleek sideboard and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He held one out to me. "I don't drink," I said. "Not after tonight." He nodded, setting the glass down and taking a sip from his own. "Suit yourself. We need to talk about what happens next." "I go home," I said, though the words sounded hollow even to me. "I go home, I call the police, I file another report that they'll file away until he actually hurts me." "He already actually hurt you," Nicholas corrected, his voice devoid of sympathy but full of cold fact. "He pushed you in front of a train, Megan. That is not hurting. That is attempted murder. If you go home tonight, he will finish the job. He knows where you live, doesn't he?" I looked down at my hands, clenched in my lap. "Yes. He has a key. I changed the locks, but he always finds a way." "Exactly. So going home is suicide." Nicholas walked around the sofa and sat on the coffee table opposite me, invading my personal space, but not in a way that felt threatening. It felt like he was trying to force me to see reality. "You stay here. Tonight. Tomorrow. We figure out a long-term solution." "Why?" I asked, finally looking him in the eye, the question that had been burning in my throat since he pulled me from the tracks. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. I'm nobody. I'm just a nurse who made a bad choice in men 2 years ago. You risked your life for me. Now you're hiding me in a penthouse that probably costs more than my hospital wing. What do you want? Nicholas held my gaze, his dark eyes unreadable. I want nothing from you, Megan. I was there. I saw a man try to kill a woman who was fighting back. I reacted. It is a principle. A principle? I let out a short, disbelief-filled laugh. People don't jump onto subway tracks for principles. They do it for people they love or for money, or because they're crazy. Perhaps I am crazy, he said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Or perhaps I simply despise men who prey on the vulnerable. Whatever the reason, you are here now, and I am responsible for you. Responsible? I bristled. I'm not a stray cat you picked up. I have a job. Well, I don't have much of a life right now thanks to Brandon, but it's mine. Is it? Nicholas challenged gently, because from where I sat, it looked like your life was about to be ended by someone else's choice. I gave it back to you. What you do with it is your business. But tonight, my business is keeping you breathing. I opened my mouth to argue, to assert my independence, but the exhaustion hit me like a physical blow. He was right. I had no safe place to go. My bank account was drained from moving 3 times in 6 months. My friends had drifted away, tired of the drama Brandon created. I was alone, except for this stranger. Thank you, I said quietly, the fight draining out of me. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. Stay alive, Nicholas said, standing up. That is payment enough. He turned to Joseph, who had been a silent sentinel by the door. Show her to the guest suite. Get her whatever she needs. Clothes, food. And Joseph? No one knows she is here. No one. Understood, boss, Joseph said with a nod. Nicholas looked at me one last time, his expression unreadable again. Sleep, Megan. The world will still be ugly in the morning, but at least you will be rested enough to face it. With that, he turned and walked down the hall, disappearing into the shadows of his fortress. The guest suite was larger than my entire apartment. The bed was a cloud of white linens, the bathroom a spa of marble and glass. Joseph had provided me with a set of clothes, a soft gray t-shirt and sweatpants that were clearly men's but clean and high quality. I showered, scrubbing my skin until it was pink, trying to wash away the feeling of the subway tracks, the phantom sensation of the train's wind on my face. When I finally lay down, I thought sleep would be impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the headlights. I saw Brandon's face, but the bed was safe. The room was silent, and the exhaustion was absolute. I fell into a dreamless, heavy slumber. I woke with a start, disoriented. The room was filled with the gray light of early morning. For a second, I thought I was back in my old apartment, waiting for Brandon to start an argument. Then the memories flooded back. The train. Nicholas. I sat up, wincing as my knee protested. It was stiff, but manageable. I limped to the window. We were high up, the city spread out below like a toy set. It looked peaceful from here. Deceptive. A knock on the door made me turn. "Come in," I called, my voice raspy. Nicholas entered. He had changed. The ruined suit was gone, replaced by a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle, and dark trousers. He looked fresh, alert, as if he hadn't spent the night saving strangers. He held a tablet in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. "Coffee," he said, extending the cup. "Black. I didn't know how you'd take it." "Black is perfect," I said, accepting it greedily. The warmth seeped into my cold fingers. "Thank you. How is the knee?" "Stiff, colorful, but functional." "Good." He tapped the tablet screen. "Because we have work to do. I didn't just sit around while you slept. Joseph and I have been busy." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "Busy doing what?" "Identifying your problem," Nicholas said grimly. "I saw him push you, Megan. I saw him run. But in the chaos, I didn't get a clear look at his face, and neither did the cameras at that angle. However, he swiped the screen and held it out to me. It was a grainy still from a security camera at the turnstile entrance. It was Brandon. Unmistakable. The slope of his shoulders, the way he held his head. "That's him," I whispered, touching the screen. "Brandon Foster." Joseph ran facial recognition. Nicholas continued. "Brandon Foster, 30 years old, accountant, no criminal record. Officially." "He's careful," I said bitterly. "He knows exactly how far to push without leaving a mark that sticks. He gaslights. He manipulates. The restraining order was the first time I actually got a judge to listen, and look how well that worked." "We found something else," Nicholas said, taking the tablet back. His voice dropped an octave, becoming serious in a way that made the air in the room feel thinner. "Brandon isn't just an abusive ex-boyfriend with an anger problem. He's an accountant who freelances for very specific clients." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "He does taxes for small businesses. He does laundering for the O'Sullivan family," Nicholas said. The name meant nothing to me. "Who are the O'Sullivans?" "A low-level Irish syndicate operating out of Hell's Kitchen," Nicholas explained, his lip curling slightly in disdain. "They deal in protection rackets, some drugs, mostly moving dirty money. They are messy, disorganized, but dangerous because they are desperate." My mind reeled. "Brandon? Involved with the mob? That's impossible. He's boring. He complains about the price of kale. He watches reality TV. The banality of evil," Nicholas murmured. "He cooks their books, Megan. Which means he knows where their money is. Which means he is valuable to them. And it explains why he felt bold enough to attack you in public. He has protection." "Protection?" I repeated, the word tasting like ash. "So, the police won't touch him?" "The police might," Nicholas said. "But if he is arrested, the O'Sullivans will bail him out. They will provide lawyers. They will make witnesses disappear or recant. You are the only witness to the attempted murder, Megan. The only one who can point the finger and say, 'He pushed me.'" I understood then. The gravity of it settled on my shoulders like a lead weight. So I'm a target. Not just because he's obsessed with me, but because I'm a liability to his bosses. "Exactly." Nicholas walked over to the window, looking out at the city he clearly regarded as his chessboard. "If you go to the police now, without solid proof beyond your word, he will walk. And then he will come for you, with the O'Sullivans behind him. You cannot go back to your apartment. You cannot go back to your life as it was yesterday." Panic flared, hot and sharp. "So what? I just disappear? I have a career. I have patience. I can't just vanish." "You don't have to vanish." Nicholas turned back to me. "But you have to move, strategically. You need a place that is secure, unlisted, and under my watch." "Your watch," I said, skepticism creeping into my voice. "Why would you protect me from a mob family? If you're what you say you are, isn't that getting involved in a war you don't need?" Nicholas smiled, a cold, predatory expression that didn't reach his eyes. "The O'Sullivans are not a war, Megan. They are a nuisance. And I do not like nuisances operating in my city, hurting people under my protection." "Under your protection," I echoed. "Since when am I under your protection?" "Since I pulled you off those tracks," he said simply. "Fate put you in my hands. I do not drop what I carry." There was a finality in his tone that silenced my arguments. He wasn't asking. He was stating a fact of nature. The sun rises, gravity works. Nicholas Verciani protects what he claims. "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath. "Let's assume I believe you. Let's assume I agree to this arrangement. What happens to Brandon?" "We find him," Nicholas said. "We watch him. We wait for him to make a mistake. And men like Brandon always make mistakes because they are arrogant. When he slips, we will be there to ensure he falls. Hard. And until then, you live. You recover." He gestured to the door. "Joseph has found a property in Brooklyn. It is fully furnished, secure, and registered under a shell company. It is yours to use." "Brooklyn?" I blinked. "That's generous. But I can't pay for that." "I didn't ask for rent," Nicholas said dismissively. Consider it a safe house. You will stay there. You will continue your work. We will arrange transport, so you are never walking alone. You will live your life, but with new parameters. And what do you get out of this? I asked again, unable to let go of the suspicion ingrained in me after years of Brandon's transactional love. Nobody does something for nothing. Nicholas walked over to me, stopping just inches away. He smelled of coffee and that crisp, clean soap scent. I get to sleep at night knowing I didn't let a woman die because it was inconvenient to save her. Is that enough for you, Megan? I looked up into his face, searching for the lie, for the catch. But I saw only a strange, fierce honesty. He was a criminal, yes, a dangerous man. But in this moment, he was the only honorable thing in my world. It has to be, I whispered. Good. He checked his watch. Joseph will take you to the apartment in an hour. Get dressed. Doctor, Eris left pain medication on the dresser. Take it. He turned to leave. Business concluded. Nicholas? I called out. He paused at the door. Yes? My family, I said, the words tumbling out. In Oregon. My mom. She doesn't talk to me. Not since I stayed with Brandon the first time he hit me. She said I was dramatic, that I was throwing my life away. Nicholas turned slowly, his expression darkening. She abandoned you? She stepped back. To let me learn, she said. I swallowed hard, the old hurt surfacing. If something happens to me, if Brandon finds me, she needs to know. Just that I tried to leave. Nicholas looked at me for a long moment, and for the first time I saw something like anger in his eyes. Not at me, but for me. Nothing is going to happen to you, he said, his voice low and fervent. And your mother, people who abandon their blood when they are bleeding do not deserve explanations. But if it gives you peace, write her. Send a letter. Tell her you are safe. Tell her you are strong. But do not expect her to be what she clearly isn't. It was harsh advice, but it rang true. He didn't offer false comfort. He offered reality. I will, I said. Good. Now get ready. Your new life starts in an hour. He left the room, leaving me standing in the pool of morning light. I looked at my reflection in the window. Pale, bruised, hair messy. But alive. I was alive. I went to the dresser and took the pain medication. Then I picked up the clothes Joseph had left. Jeans and a sweater this time, likely bought by some assistant at dawn. I dressed mechanically, my mind racing. I was moving to a safe house owned by a mafia boss. I was being hunted by an ex-boyfriend who laundered money for the mob. My life had turned into a chaotic thriller overnight. But as I laced up the new sneakers provided for me, I realized something strange. I wasn't afraid of Nicholas. I was afraid of the situation, yes. Afraid of Brandon. But Nicholas? He felt like the eye of the storm. The one fixed point in a spinning world. I grabbed my tote bag, the only thing I had left from my old life, and limped toward the door. I didn't know where this road went. I didn't know if I was walking into a cage or a sanctuary, but I knew I wasn't walking onto the tracks anymore. And for today, that was enough. Downstairs, Joseph was waiting by the SUV. Nicholas was nowhere to be seen. Mr. Versiani had business, Joseph said, opening the door. He said he will check on you later. Okay, I said, climbing in. To Brooklyn, then. To Brooklyn, Joseph agreed. As the car pulled out into the city traffic, I watched the streets of Manhattan roll by, the same streets I had walked yesterday as a victim. Today, I was something else. I wasn't sure what yet. A survivor? A protege? A pawn? Time would tell. But as we crossed the bridge, the skyline gleaming in the sun, I made a silent vow to myself. I would not just be a passenger in this story. Nicholas had saved me, yes, but I had to save myself too. I had to be strong enough to deserve the second chance he had given me. I touched the bruise on my arm where Brandon had grabbed me. It was tender, fading yellow and green. It would heal. Everything would heal. I just had to survive the process. 3 days slipped by in the Brooklyn apartment like smoke through fingers. The space was larger than any place I had lived in years. 2 bedrooms, exposed brick walls, windows that overlooked a quiet street lined with brownstones. It was tasteful, furnished in muted grays and warm woods, the kind of place that appeared in lifestyle magazines under headlines like Urban Sanctuary, but it wasn't mine. It belonged to a shell company, which belonged to Nicholas Versiani, which meant it belonged to a world I was still trying to understand. Joseph had been my shadow those first days. He drove me to and from the hospital, a silent presence in the front seat who somehow made me feel both protected and surveilled. He never asked questions, never offered unsolicited commentary. He simply existed, efficient and unobtrusive, like a well-programmed security system with a heartbeat. Nicholas himself had visited once, on the second day. He had walked through the apartment with the air of a landlord inspecting his property, checking locks, testing windows, nodding in approval when he found everything to his exacting standards. We hadn't spoken much. He asked about my knee. I told him it was healing. He asked if I needed anything. I said no. He left within 10 minutes, leaving behind only the faint scent of his cologne and the unsettling feeling that I was a chess piece he had moved to a safer square. On the 4th morning, I woke early and made coffee in the sleek espresso machine that probably cost more than my first car. I stood by the window watching the neighborhood come to life. A woman jogging with her dog, a man in a suit hailing a cab, normalcy playing out in choreographed routines. I wondered if any of them knew they lived on the same block as a woman hiding from her homicidal ex-boyfriend under the protection of the mafia. Probably not. That was the beauty of New York. Everyone had secrets. No one had time to care about yours. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, though I had come to recognize the terse, efficient style. Joseph will pick you up at 10 a.m. We need to talk. N. Not a request. An order dressed in polite language. I sighed, sipping my coffee. The bitterness matched my mood. At exactly 10, Joseph's black SUV pulled up outside. I grabbed my jacket, a new one, along with an entire wardrobe that had mysteriously appeared in the closet yesterday. All in my size, all tasteful and expensive, and headed downstairs. "Morning, Miss Collins," Joseph greeted, opening the door. "Just Megan, please," I said for the 3rd time. He nodded but didn't commit to using it. We drove in silence through Brooklyn, crossing into Manhattan. I recognized the route. We were heading back to the Upper East Side, back to Nicholas's penthouse. My stomach tightened with a mix of apprehension and something else I refused to name. Nicholas was waiting in the living room when Joseph led me up. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, hands in his pockets, the morning light casting him in stark silhouette. He turned when he heard us enter. "Megan," he said, his voice carrying that same controlled warmth I was beginning to associate with him. "Thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" I asked, sharper than I intended. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "Always. But I am glad you chose to come." Joseph disappeared into another room, leaving us alone. Nicholas gestured to the couch. "Sit. Coffee?" "I've had my quota for the morning," I said, sitting on the edge of the sofa. "You said we needed to talk." He moved to the chair opposite me, sitting with the kind of controlled grace that suggested he was always aware of his body, always ready to move. "Joseph has been watching your ex-boyfriend. Brandon Foster has not gone home. His phone is off. His car is parked outside his apartment building, but there is no activity. He's hiding," I said, my chest tightening. "Or being hidden," Nicholas corrected. I had my people dig deeper. Brandon works as a freelance accountant for several businesses, most of them legitimate, but 2 of his clients are fronts for the O'Sullivan operation. He moves their money, cleans it, makes it look respectable. I absorbed this, feeling the last remnants of my old life, the one where Brandon was just a controlling boyfriend with anger issues, crumble away. So he's not just protected by them, he's useful to them. Exactly. Which means if you go to the police now with no witnesses and no evidence beyond your word, the O'Sullivans will provide him with lawyers, alibis, whatever he needs. He will walk free, and then he will come for you. "So what do?" I asked, hating the "we" that slipped out. This wasn't my world. This wasn't my fight. Except it was, because Brandon had made it so when he pushed me onto those tracks. Nicholas leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. We wait. We watch. Men like Brandon, they are arrogant. They make mistakes. And when he does, we will be ready. Ready to do what? To ensure he never threatens you again. There was a finality in his tone that should have frightened me. Instead, I felt a grim satisfaction. I was tired of being afraid, tired of looking over my shoulder. If Nicholas Versiani wanted to end this, I wouldn't stand in his way. Okay, I said simply. Nicholas studied me, as if seeing something new. You are not what I expected, Megan Collins. What did you expect? Tears, panic, more questions about why I am helping you. I'm a nurse in a Manhattan ER, I said. I've seen people die on gurneys because someone they loved put them there. I've held the hands of women who swore they fell down the stairs one too many times. I know what men like Brandon do when they don't get stopped. So if you're offering to stop him, I'm not going to waste time asking why. I'm going to say thank you and let you work. Something shifted in Nicholas's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of a kindred pragmatism. There is something else, he said, pulling a tablet from the side table. He swiped the screen and handed it to me. Your hospital received a call yesterday. A man claiming to be your brother, asking about your shift schedule. Ice flooded my veins. I don't have a brother. I know. The receptionist did not give him the information, but it confirms Brandon is looking for you. He knows you will go back to work eventually. So I'm trapped, I said, the frustration boiling over. I can't work. I can't live. I just hide here forever. Not forever, Nicholas said calmly. Just until we neutralize the threat. And how long will that take? As long as it takes. I stood, pacing to the window. The city stretched out below, indifferent and vast. I have patience, Nicholas. People depending on me. I can't just disappear. You are no good to them dead. I'm no good to them hiding either. I spun to face him. This is my life, my career. I worked too hard to let Brandon take that from me too. Nicholas stood as well, crossing the space between us in 2 strides. He was close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Then what do you propose? Let me go back to work, I said. With security, Joseph or someone. I'll be careful. I'll stay in public areas. But I need to work. I need to feel like I'm still me. Nicholas considered this, his jaw tight. It is a risk. Everything is a risk, I countered. But I'm taking this one. With or without your permission. For a long moment we stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Then slowly, Nicholas nodded. You return to work. But Joseph accompanies you. Always. And you do not deviate from the route we establish. No stopping for coffee, no walking home alone, no improvisation. Agreed. And you tell no one about Brandon, about the O'Sullivans, about me. As far as your colleagues know, you had a bad fall and needed a few days off. Agreed. Nicholas extended his hand. I took it, his grip firm and warm. Then we have an understanding. We do, I said. He didn't release my hand immediately. His thumb brushed across my knuckles, a brief, almost unconscious gesture. Then he stepped back, breaking the moment. Joseph will take you back. You start your next shift tomorrow. He will be outside the entire time. Thank you, Nicholas. He turned away, dismissing me. Do not thank me yet, Megan. This is far from over. I left the penthouse with a strange mix of emotions swirling in my chest. Relief that I could return to work. Fear of what Brandon might do next. And something else, something warm and unsettling, connected to the man who had saved me and was now orchestrating my life with the precision of a general moving troops. That evening, back in the Brooklyn apartment, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out a piece of paper and wrote a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real handwritten letter. Dear Mom, I began, my pen hovering over the page. What did I say to a woman who had abandoned me when I needed her most? Who had chosen comfort over conflict? Who had looked at her daughter's bruises and called them drama? I wrote anyway. I told her I was safe. I told her I had left Brandon, that I was starting over. I didn't tell her about the subway, about Nicholas, about the mafia and the danger still circling me like sharks. I just told her I was trying, that I was stronger than she thought. I signed it, sealed it in an envelope, and left it on the kitchen counter. Tomorrow, I would mail it, not because I expected a response, but because Nicholas had been right. I needed to close that door on my own terms, not have it slammed in my face. That night, I dreamed of trains and dark eyes and the feeling of falling with no ground in sight. The Brooklyn apartment became my gilded cage, albeit one with high ceilings and exposed brick. 2 weeks had passed since I moved in, 2 weeks of a routine that felt both borrowed and fragile. My life, which had once been a chaotic scramble of ER shifts and dodging Brandon's moods, was now ordered with military precision. I woke up at 6 a.m. I made coffee. I dressed in the clothes Nicholas had provided, understated, expensive, nothing like the scrubs and worn-out jeans I was used to. At 7 a.m., Joseph was downstairs in the black SUV. We drove to the hospital. I worked my 12-hour shift, trying to ignore the way my colleagues looked at me, the whispers of bad fall and lucky to be alive trailing in my wake. They didn't know the half of it. Every time I walked through the ER doors, Joseph was there. He didn't hover, didn't loom, but he was always within sight. A dark suit in a sea of blue scrubs and white coats. He became part of the scenery, like the vending machines or the flickering fluorescent light in Bay 4. When I went for lunch, he was at a corner table. When I left at night, the SUV was idling at the curb before I even stepped onto the sidewalk. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like the only thing keeping my lungs inflating. Nicholas was different. He wasn't a constant presence like Joseph. He was a ghost who occasionally materialized to remind me that he haunted my life. He would appear at the apartment some evenings, usually unannounced but never intrusively. He would bring dinner, take out from places I couldn't afford, or sometimes ingredients that he would cook himself with a surprising, practiced competence. "You chop onions like a surgeon," I commented one night, watching him dice a red onion with terrifying speed. "And you stitch wounds like a seamstress," he countered without looking up. "We both work with knives, Megan. The difference is you try to keep the blood inside." "And you?" I asked, leaning against the counter, wine glass in hand. The wine was his, of course, a Barolo that tasted like velvet and smoke. He paused, the knife hovering over the cutting board. He looked at me, his dark eyes catching the warm light of the kitchen pendant. I try to spill it only when necessary. It was moments like this that made me realize how dangerous the game I was playing truly was. Not because of Brandon, or the O'Sullivans, or the vague threat of enemies that Nicholas alluded to, but because I was starting to get used to this. To him. I was starting to look forward to the sound of the key in the lock. I was starting to save stories from my shift to tell him. The kid who swallowed a quarter. The tourist who tripped over a pigeon. I was starting to see the man beneath the myth he had carefully constructed. He told me about his childhood in Italy, about the olive groves his grandfather tended, about the smell of rain on hot stone. He didn't talk about how he ended up in New York running a criminal empire, and I didn't ask. We had an unspoken agreement. We traded safe truths. I told him about nursing school, about my dream of joining Doctors Without Borders. He listened with an intensity that made me feel like the most interesting person in the world. "Why haven't you gone?" he asked one evening, as we sat on the sofa eating risotto. "To join them, the doctors. Life," I shrugged. "Student loans." Then Brandon, he didn't like the idea of me traveling, said it was dangerous. Nicholas let out a short, dark laugh. Dangerous. Coming from a man who pushes women onto train tracks, that is rich. He wasn't always like that, I said defensively, then stopped. Why was I defending him? No, that's a lie. He was always like that. I just didn't want to see it. We see what we want to see, Nicholas said. It is a human failing, not just yours. What do you not want to see? I asked boldly. He looked at me, his gaze dropping to my lips for a fraction of a second before returning to my eyes. The air in the room suddenly felt thick, charged with static. I see everything, Megan. That is my curse. I looked away first, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. One Tuesday evening, I came home from a particularly grueling shift, 3 car accidents and a cardiac arrest, to find Nicholas sitting in the armchair by the window. He wasn't cooking. He wasn't reading. He was just sitting in the dark, watching the street below. "Nicholas?" I flipped the switch, bathing the room in soft light. He turned, and I saw the tension radiating off him in waves. His jaw was set, his shoulders tight under his suit jacket. He looked like a coiled spring. "What's wrong?" I asked, dropping my bag and moving toward him. "Is it Brandon?" "No," he said, his voice rough. "Brandon is quiet. Too quiet. But that is not why I am here." "Then why?" He stood up, running a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "I have a meeting tonight, a difficult one. I wanted to see you before I went." "See me?" I repeated, confused. "Why?" "Because you are real," he said, as if that explained everything. "Because in my world, everything is a lie, a maneuver, a leverage. You are just Megan. You save lives. You drink your coffee black. You worry about your patients." He took a step closer, invading my personal space. I didn't back away. I didn't want to. "Nicholas," I whispered. "I should not be here," he murmured, his eyes searching my face. "I should keep you separate, safe. But I find myself drawn to this place, to you." "I'm not complaining," I said, the boldness of the words surprising me. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek. His touch was warm, calloused, gentle. "You should be. You should run from me, Megan. Run fast and far." "I'm done running," I said. "I told you that." He stared at me for a long moment, a war playing out behind his eyes. Then slowly, deliberately, he leaned in. I held my breath, my eyes fluttering shut. His lips brushed mine, a feather-light contact that sent a shockwave through my entire body. It wasn't a demanding kiss. It wasn't possessive. It was a question. A hesitation. I answered it by leaning into him, my hands finding purchase on the lapels of his jacket. The kiss deepened, becoming something else entirely. Hunger. Need. The taste of him, coffee and mint, and something uniquely Nicholas, filled my senses. His arms went around me, pulling me flush against his hard body. I felt the gun holstered at his side, a cold reminder of who he was. But I didn't care. In that moment, he was just a man, and I was just a woman who had been lonely for a very long time. We broke apart breathless, foreheads resting against each other. "Megan," he groaned, his voice ragged. "Don't apologize," I whispered. "Please don't apologize." "I won't," he said. "But I have to go. Joseph is waiting." "Go," I said, stepping back, though every instinct screamed at me to pull him back. "Be safe." "I will be," he promised. "I always am." He left, leaving the taste of him on my lips and a hurricane in my chest. The next few days passed in a blur of anticipation. Nicholas texted more often, short updates, checks on my safety, nothing about the kiss, but it hung between us, a silent promise. Then the bubble burst. I was at the hospital, restocking a supply cart in Trauma 2, when a nurse from the front desk poked her head in. "Megan, there's a delivery for you. Flowers." My stomach dropped. "Flowers?" "Huge bouquet. Roses. They're gorgeous." She winked. "That mysterious guy who drops you off?" "Maybe," I said, forcing a smile. "I'll come get them." I walked to the nurse's station on leaden legs. There, sitting on the counter, was a massive arrangement of red roses. Dark red, almost black. They were beautiful, aggressive, expensive, and they weren't from Nicholas. I knew it before I even reached for the card. Nicholas didn't do clichés. He didn't send roses to my workplace. He brought wine to my apartment. My hand trembled as I plucked the small envelope from the plastic fork. I opened it, sliding out the card. The handwriting was familiar, spiky, aggressive. "You can't hide forever, Meg. I see you. I see him. Tick-tock." No signature. None was needed. "Megan, you okay?" The unit clerk, Sarah, looked at me with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I'm fine," I stammered. "Just allergies. Can you throw these out for me?" Please? Throw them out? Are you crazy? They must have cost a fortune. Please, Sarah. Just get rid of them. I can't. The smell. I turned and walked away before I could vomit. I went straight to the staff bathroom, locked the door, and pulled out my phone. My fingers shook so hard I mistyped Nicholas's number twice. He answered on the first ring. Megan? He found me, I whispered, sliding down the tiled wall to the floor. He sent flowers to the hospital. He knows I'm here. Stay there, Nicholas said instantly. His voice was ice cold. Do not leave the hospital. Do not go outside. Is Joseph with you? He's outside. In the car. I'm calling him now. He's coming in. Stay in a secure area, Megan. I am on my way. Nicholas, the card. He said, TikTok. He said he sees you. He sees nothing. Nicholas growled. He is a blind man walking into a fire. Give me 20 minutes. The line went dead. 20 minutes later, Nicholas strode into the ER like he owned it. He was flanked by Joseph and another man I didn't recognize. Younger, with a scar through his eyebrow. Heads turned. People whispered. Nicholas ignored them all, scanning the room until his eyes locked on me where I was standing by the triage desk. He crossed the room, ignoring the authorized personnel only sign. He stopped in front of me, his hands hovering as if he wanted to grab me but was restraining himself. Are you hurt? No. Just scared. Where is the card? I handed it to him. He read it, his expression turning stony. He handed it to Joseph. Bag it. Fingerprints. Yes, boss. Come, Nicholas said to me. We are leaving. I have 4 hours left on my shift. I protested weakly. You are done for today, he said. Your manager will understand. Or I will make them understand. He led me out of the hospital, his hand on the small of my back, a protective brand. We got into the SUV. The atmosphere was different now. The quiet domesticity of the last few weeks was gone, replaced by the sharp edge of danger. He knows I'm working, I said, staring out the window. He knows where I am. So the safe house. It's useless. No, Nicholas said. It means he is desperate. He is trying to flush you out, to scare you into running again. It's working, I admitted. No, he said firmly, because this time, you are not running. This time we answer. He turned to look at me, and the look in his eyes was terrifying. It wasn't the gentle man who cooked risotto. It was the man who jumped onto subway tracks, the man who ran a criminal empire. We are going to meet him, Nicholas said. What? He wants you? He can have a meeting, but it will be on my terms, in my territory, and he will learn exactly what happens when you threaten what is mine. Yours? I asked, the word hanging in the air. Yes, Nicholas said, and this time he didn't look away. Mine. The drive back to Brooklyn was silent, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the silence before a storm. Brandon had pushed. Now, Nicholas was going to push back, and I was the prize in the middle of the board. But as I looked at Nicholas's profile, hard, determined, lethal, I realized something. I wasn't a pawn. I was the queen, and the king was ready to burn the whole board to keep me safe. Nicholas, I said softly. Be careful. He glanced at me, and for a second the mask slipped. For you, Megan, I will be careful. But for him, I will be a nightmare. We arrived at the apartment. Nicholas walked me up, checking every corner again. Joseph stays at the door tonight, he said. I have to go prepare. Prepare for what? For the end of Brandon Foster. He turned to leave, but I caught his hand. Come back, I whispered. Promise me you'll come back. He squeezed my hand, bringing it to his lips for a brief, hard kiss. I always come back. He left, and I was alone in the safe house that suddenly felt very fragile. I looked at the empty vase on the counter where I usually put flowers. I thought of the black roses in the hospital trash. Tick-tock. The game was on. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just a player. I was the reason for the game, and I had to trust that Nicholas knew how to win, because if he lost, there would be no coming back for either of us. The black roses arrived on a Wednesday. By Friday, Brandon Foster was a dead man walking, even if he didn't know it yet. Nicholas had disappeared into his world of shadows and violence immediately after the flowers. Joseph became my constant shadow. No longer subtle. He was in the apartment, outside my bedroom door at night, in the hallway while I showered. It should have felt intrusive. Instead, it felt like the walls of a fortress closing in around me. "Where is he?" I asked Joseph on the third morning, as I poured coffee with shaking hands. Joseph, who rarely spoke unless spoken to, looked at me with something almost like sympathy. "He is arranging things, Miss Collins. It is better if you do not know the details." "I'm not a child," I snapped. "Brandon sent me those flowers. He threatened me. I have a right to know what's happening." "You have a right to safety," Joseph corrected gently. "Mr. Versiani is ensuring that. The how and the when are not for you to worry about. But I did worry. I worried that Nicholas would do something that would get him killed. I worried that this would escalate into a war I had inadvertently started. I worried that I was the catalyst for violence I couldn't control. On Friday evening, Nicholas finally returned. I heard the key in the lock, heard Joseph's low greeting, and then Nicholas was there in the doorway of the living room, where I sat pretending to read a book I hadn't absorbed a single word of. He looked different. Harder. The elegant businessman was gone, replaced by something colder, sharper. His suit was the same expensive cut, but there was tension in his shoulders, a coiled readiness in his posture. He had been doing things. Terrible things, probably. Things I shouldn't ask about. "Megan," he said, his voice rough. "Nicholas." I set the book down. "Are you okay?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You ask if I am okay? After what he did to you?" "I'm asking because I care," I said, standing up. "You've been gone for 3 days. Joseph wouldn't tell me anything. I thought maybe something had happened to you." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or warmth. "Nothing happened to me, but much has happened around me." "Brandon?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Brandon is going to meet with me," Nicholas said, moving into the room. He poured himself a drink from the sideboard, whiskey, neat, and downed it in one smooth motion. "Tomorrow night. Neutral territory." "A meeting?" I felt cold dread pool in my stomach. "Nicholas, he tried to kill me. You can't just meet with him like it's a business negotiation." "That is exactly what it is," Nicholas said, turning to face me. "Brandon works for the O'Sullivans. He is their asset. If I simply make him disappear, they will retaliate. It will be messy, public. People will get hurt, innocent people. So what? You're going to negotiate with him? Ask him nicely to leave me alone?" "No," Nicholas said, his voice dropping to something dark and final. "I am going to give the O'Sullivans a choice. They give up Brandon. They walk away clean. Or they keep protecting him, and I dismantle their organization piece by piece until there is nothing left." I stared at him, my heart hammering. "You can do that?" "I can do many things, Megan," he said quietly. "Most of them you do not want to know about. And what if they choose to keep him? What if they decide you're bluffing?" Nicholas set his glass down with a deliberate click. "Then I will show them I am not a man who bluffs." The certainty in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a savage satisfaction. Brandon had pushed me onto those tracks. He had stalked me, threatened me, made my life a waking nightmare for 6 months. If Nicholas Versiani was about to rain hell down on him, I wasn't going to stop him. "I want to be there," I said. Nicholas's eyes widened fractionally. "Absolutely not. He sent me those flowers, Nicholas. He's doing this because of me. I have a right to face him. You have a right to safety." Nicholas echoed Joseph's words. "Not revenge." "It's not revenge," I said, moving closer to him. "It's closure. I need to see him know that he lost, that I'm not his victim anymore." Nicholas studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes searching my face. "You do not understand what you are asking. This will not be a pleasant conversation. There will be threats, posturing, possibly violence. I'm a trauma nurse," I reminded him. "I've seen violence. I've stitched up gunshot wounds and held pressure on stab victims. I'm not some delicate flower who will faint at raised voices." "This is different," Nicholas insisted. "This is personal." "Exactly," I said, "which is why I need to be there." We stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Nicholas sighed, a rare show of concession. "You stay in the car," he said. "You do not get out unless I tell you it is safe. You do not speak to Brandon. You do not engage. You are there to observe. Nothing more." "Agreed?" "Agreed," I said, relief flooding through me. "And Megan?" His hand came up to cut my cheek, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "If anything happens, if I tell you to run, you run. You do not argue. You do not hesitate. You trust me, and you run. Nothing's going to happen," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "Promise me," he insisted, his grip tightening slightly. "I promise," I whispered. He leaned in, resting his forehead against mine. We stood like that for a moment, breathing the same air, the chaos of the world outside temporarily forgotten. "Tomorrow night, this ends," he murmured. "One way or another, one way or another," I echoed. He kissed me then, hard and desperate. A kiss that tasted like goodbye and hello all at once. When we broke apart, he was already pulling away, the mask of the crime lord sliding back into place. "Joseph will stay with you tonight," he said, his voice businesslike again. "I have preparations to make. Nicholas," I called as he reached the door. He paused, looking back. "Thank you. For everything." "Do not thank me yet," he said, his expression unreadable. "Wait until he is gone. Then you can thank me." He left, and I was alone with Joseph's silent presence in the hallway, and the weight of what was coming pressing down on my chest like a stone. The next day passed in agonizing slowness. I couldn't focus on anything. I tried to read, tried to watch television, tried to eat the food Joseph ordered for me. Everything tasted like ash. My stomach was a knot of anxiety and anticipation. At 7 p.m., Nicholas arrived with 2 other men I didn't recognize. They wore the same dark suits, the same air of controlled violence. Nicholas's eyes found mine immediately. "Are you certain about this?" he asked. "Yes," I said, grabbing my jacket. "Then let's go." We drove through Brooklyn and into Queens, the city lights blurring past the tinted windows. Nobody spoke. The tension in the car was suffocating. We finally pulled up to what looked like an abandoned warehouse near the docks. The area was industrial, desolate, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. "This is neutral territory," Nicholas explained, helping me out of the car. "The O'Sullivan suggested it. Neither side has claim here." 3 black sedans were already parked in front of the warehouse. Men in suits stood outside, smoking cigarettes, their eyes tracking our arrival with predatory interest. "You stay here," Nicholas said, opening the car door for me but not letting me step out. "Joseph and Luca will be with you. If anything goes wrong, they drive you away immediately." "Okay," I said, though my heart was racing. Nicholas reached into his jacket and pulled out a small phone. "If I do not come out in 30 minutes, you call this number. Do you understand?" I took the phone with numb fingers. "Nicholas." 30 minutes, Megan," he repeated. "Then you leave. Promise me." "I promise." He kissed my forehead quickly, then turned and walked toward the warehouse entrance. The men waiting there parted for him, but not without tension. I watched until he disappeared inside, then sank back into the seat. Joseph turned in the driver's seat to look at me. "He will be fine, Miss Collins. Mr. Versiani has been doing this for a very long time." "That doesn't make it easier," I muttered, staring at the warehouse door. Minutes ticked by like hours. I checked the phone Nicholas had given me compulsively. 5 minutes. 10. 15. At 22 minutes, the warehouse door burst open. Men poured out, shouting, weapons drawn. I saw Nicholas in the center, his hands raised in a placating gesture, but his expression was stone cold. And behind him, being dragged by 2 massive men, was Brandon. My ex-boyfriend looked terrible. His face was bruised, his lips split, his expensive polo shirt was torn and stained, but his eyes were wild with fear and rage, and when they locked onto the car, onto me, something primal and terrifying flashed across his face. "Megan!" he screamed, struggling against his captors. "Megan, you did this! You set me up!" One of the O'Sullivan men, I assumed it was their leader, a tall man with silver hair, stepped forward, speaking rapidly to Nicholas. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see the body language. Negotiation, threat, counter-threat. Brandon kept screaming my name, his voice raw and desperate. Nicholas said something sharp, his hand slicing through the air in a decisive gesture. The silver-haired man nodded once, tersely. Then he turned to the men holding Brandon and gave a single-word command. They released him. Brandon stumbled, then straightened, his eyes finding mine again through the car window. And then he ran. Not away from the warehouse. Toward the car. Toward me. "Drive!" I shouted at Joseph, panic seizing my throat. But before Joseph could even start the engine, Nicholas moved. He intercepted Brandon with brutal efficiency, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him against the hood of one of the sedans. The crack of bone on metal echoed across the empty lot. "You do not look at her," Nicholas snarled, loud enough that I could hear through the closed window. "You do not speak to her. You do not think about her. She is under my protection, and if you come within a mile of her ever again, there will not be enough of you left to identify." Brandon was sobbing now, blood streaming from his nose. "Please," he begged. "Please, I didn't mean—" "You pushed her in front of a train," Nicholas hissed, his face inches from Brandon's. "You sent her flowers at her workplace. You stalked her for 6 months. You meant every bit of it, but the O'Sullivans have agreed to hand you over to the proper authorities. You will be charged with assault, stalking, and attempted murder, and you will plead guilty. Because if you do not, I will make sure you never leave prison alive. Do you understand me?" Brandon nodded frantically, tears and blood mixing on his face. "Good," Nicholas said, shoving him toward a police car that had just pulled up. Arranged, obviously part of the deal. 2 officers got out, reading Brandon his rights as they cuffed him. Nicholas watched until Brandon was secured in the back seat, then turned and walked back to our car. He slid into the passenger seat, his breathing controlled but heavy. "It's done," he said quietly. "He will never hurt you again." I stared at him. At this man who had just orchestrated the arrest of my abuser through a combination of mafia negotiations and legal maneuvering. "How did you—" "The O'Sullivans wanted to keep their accountant. But I reminded them that protecting a man who tries to kill women in public is bad for business. They value stability more than one asset. So they agreed to let him face real consequences. He will plead guilty. He will go to prison. And you are free. Free." The word felt foreign in my mouth. I had been running for so long, hiding, looking over my shoulder. And now, it was over. "Thank you," I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. Nicholas reached over and took my hand. "You are welcome, Megan. Now let's go home." As Joseph started the car and we pulled away from the warehouse, I looked back one last time. Brandon was in the police car, his face pressed against the window, watching us leave. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. He was the one in chains now, and I was free. The peace that followed Brandon's arrest was fragile, like a thin layer of ice over a deep, dark lake. The city felt safer, the air easier to breathe, but the silence left behind was heavy with things unsaid. 2 weeks had passed since the warehouse. Brandon was in custody, his bail denied on the strength of an anonymous evidence package that had landed on the district attorney's desk the morning after his arrest. Security footage from the station, screenshots of the TikTok messages and the florist's card, the audio of his call to the hospital pretending to be my brother, and copies of the incident reports the hospital had already filed about the assault painted a picture of a dangerous, escalating obsession. Whoever had assembled it had practically done the prosecutor's job for them. The O'Sullivans had retreated into the shadows of Hell's Kitchen, their tail tucked firmly between their legs after Nicholas's display of dominance. My life had returned to a semblance of normalcy. I went to work. I came home to the Brooklyn apartment. I cooked. I slept. But something was shifting. The adrenaline that had fueled me for weeks was gone, replaced by a quiet, growing realization of just how deeply I had sunk into Nicholas Verciani's world. Nicholas himself had pulled back. He still visited, but the visits were different. Shorter, more formal. He didn't stay for dinner. He didn't read poetry on my sofa. He checked in, asked if I needed anything, and left. It was as if, Now that the immediate danger was gone, he was trying to build a wall between us again. But walls have doors, and I was determined to find the key. One rainy Tuesday evening, he arrived later than usual. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper, his tie loosened. He declined my offer of wine, standing by the window as he always did, watching the street. "I have a proposition for you," he said, without turning around. "A proposition?" I asked, drying my hands on a dish towel. "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous," he said, finally facing me. "Practical. The lease on this apartment, it is indefinite. You can stay here as long as you like. But Joseph tells me you have been looking at listings in Queens." I had been. Late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I scrolled through rental apps, trying to imagine a life that was just mine again. "I can't stay here forever, Nicholas. It's too much. Too big. Too expensive. I need to stand on my own feet." "You are standing on your own feet," he said. "This place gives you the security to do that without looking over your shoulder." "It gives me security provided by you," I corrected. "And while I am grateful, so grateful, I can't be your charity case forever." "You are not a charity case," he said sharply. "You are..." He trailed off, frustration flickering across his face. "I am what?" I stepped closer, crossing the invisible line he had drawn between us. "What am I to you, Nicholas, now that the damsel in distress part of the story is over?" He looked at me, really looked at me, stripping away the layers of politeness and control. "You are the only thing in my life that isn't gray," he admitted, his voice low. "Everything else, it is business, strategy, leverage. You are just... you. Then let me be me," I said softly. "Let me take you somewhere. Not a safe house, not a warehouse, just somewhere normal." "Normal?" He raised an eyebrow. "I do not do normal well, Megan." "Try," I challenged. "Tomorrow night. I'm off. Pick me up at 7. No Joseph. Just us." He hesitated, the calculator in his head running the risks. Then, slowly, he nodded. 7. He arrived at 7 sharp, driving a sleek silver coupe instead of the armored SUV. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. He looked devastatingly handsome and entirely out of place on a Brooklyn residential street. "Where are we going?" he asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "There's a place in Little Italy," I said. "Not one of the tourist traps. A small family place. My dad used to take me there when I was a kid before... before." Nicholas glanced at me. "Little Italy? That is bold. You know who owns most of that territory?" "I assume you do," I said. "Or someone you know. Does it matter?" "It might," he said, merging into traffic. "But for tonight, we will say it doesn't." The restaurant, Da Enzio, was exactly as I remembered it. Smelling of garlic and tomatoes, with checkered tablecloths and old photos on the walls. The owner, a stout man with a white mustache, looked up when we entered. His eyes widened when he saw Nicholas. He rushed over, wiping his hands on his apron. "Mr. Versiani, what an honor. We did not know you were coming." "We didn't," Nicholas said smoothly, switching to flawless Italian. "Solo una cena tranquilla, Enzio. Per favore." "Just a quiet dinner, Enzio, please." Enzio nodded vigorously. "Certamente, certamente. The best table. Come, come." He led us to a secluded booth in the back, away from the main floor. Nicholas sat with his back to the wall, eyes scanning the room automatically before settling on me. "So much for normal," I teased gently. "Do you get that reaction everywhere? Only in places that pay their insurance premiums on time," he said dryly. We ordered wine and pasta. The tension that usually hummed around Nicholas seemed to dissipate in the warmth of the restaurant. He relaxed, shoulders dropping an inch. We talked. Not about Brandon or the O'Sullivans or safety protocols. We talked about food, about music. I found out he played the piano. He found out I had a secret obsession with bad reality TV. "You watch people argue on islands for fun?" he asked, genuinely baffled. "It's escapism," I defended. "Nobody gets shot. Nobody dies. They just cry about coconuts." I prefer opera, he said. At least the tragedy has a soundtrack. Snob, I laughed. He smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. It transformed his face, making him look younger, lighter. For a moment, I forgot who he was. I forgot the gun I knew was tucked against his ribs. I just saw a man I was falling for, but the world has a way of intruding. As we were finishing our espresso, Nicholas's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and the smile vanished. The mask slammed back into place. "We have to go," he said, signaling for the check. "What is it?" I asked, alarm spiking. "Business," he said shortly. "Joseph is outside with the car. He will take you home." "Joseph is here?" I looked around. "I thought it was just us. Joseph is always close," Nicholas said, standing up. "I am sorry, Megan. This was a mistake." "A mistake?" I stood too, hurt flashing through me. Dinner was a mistake? Thinking I could have this, he gestured between us. Thinking I could be normal for one night. I cannot. The world does not stop because I want to eat pasta with a beautiful woman. It stopped for 2 hours, I argued. That counts for something. Not enough, he said grimly. He placed a stack of cash on the table, far more than the bill required. "Go with Joseph. I will call you." He walked out without looking back, disappearing into the night. I was left standing in the warm glow of the restaurant, feeling cold and abandoned. Joseph drove me home in silence. I didn't ask what had happened. I knew better now. Nicholas Verciani lived in a world of fires, and he spent his life putting them out before they burned everything he touched, including me. I didn't hear from him for 3 days. I went to work. I came home. I wrote another letter to my mother, this one shorter, just saying I was okay. I didn't mail it. On the 4th night, I woke up to a sound in the living room. I froze, heart hammering. The security system hadn't beeped. That meant whoever it was had a key or the code. I grabbed the heavy flashlight I kept by the bed, a pitiful weapon, but better than nothing, and crept into the hallway. Nicholas was standing by the window, looking out at the sleeping city. He was still wearing his suit, but his jacket was thrown over a chair. His shirt was stained with something dark. "Nicholas," I whispered. He turned. His face was pale, drawn. There was a bandage wrapped around his left hand, white stark against the darkness. "I woke you," he said, his voice rough. "I am sorry. I should not have come." "You're hurt," I said, dropping the flashlight and rushing to him. "Let me see." "It is nothing." He tried to pull his hand away, but I caught it gently. "Just a cut." "A cut doesn't bleed through 3 layers of gauze," I said, examining the bandage. "Sit down. I'll get the kit." He sat heavily on the sofa. I ran to the bathroom, grabbing the first aid supplies I had stocked. When I returned, he had his head back, eyes closed. He looked exhausted. I unwrapped the bandage. It was a knife wound, deep across the palm. Defensive. Nasty. "This needs stitches," I said, professional mode taking over. "Why didn't you go to Dr. Eris?" "Eris asks too many questions," Nicholas murmured. "And I wanted to see you." "You're an idiot," I said affectionately, cleaning the wound. He hissed in breath but didn't pull away. "Hold still. This is going to sting." I stitched him up by the light of the floor lamp, my hands steady. He watched me the whole time, his dark eyes unreadable. "It was the O'Sullivans," he said suddenly. "Thomas O'Sullivan wasn't happy about the deal with Brandon. He tried to renegotiate tonight. Is that what this is?" I gestured to his hand. "Renegotiation?" "This was his opening argument," Nicholas said dryly. My rebuttal was more persuasive. "Is he dead?" I asked, looking up. "No, but he understands the terms of our agreement much better now." I finished the last stitch and tied it off. "There. Keep it dry. Watch for infection." "Thank you, Nurse Collins." I started to pack up the kit, but his uninjured hand caught my wrist. "Megan." I looked at him. "What?" "I tried to stay away," he said. "After the restaurant, I tried to tell myself it was too dangerous. That you deserve better than a man who comes to your apartment at 3 a.m. bleeding. I don't want better," I said softly. "I want you." I am not a good man, he warned. I am selfish. I am violent. I will bring darkness into your life. You already brought light, I countered. You saved me, Nicholas. In every way a person can be saved. You don't get to decide you're bad for me now. He pulled me toward him. I went willingly, settling between his knees. His good hand came up to cut my face, his thumb tracing my lower lip. If I kiss you now, he whispered. I will not stop. Good, I breathed. He kissed me, and this time there was no hesitation, no question. It was a claim, a promise, a surrender. We moved to the bedroom, leaving the blood-stained bandage and the darkness of his world behind in the living room. For tonight, there were no O'Sullivans, no Brandon, no Mafia wars. Just Nicholas and Megan. Just a man and a woman finding shelter in each other. And for the first time since I fell onto those tracks, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was living. And it was terrifying. And it was wonderful. And it was enough. Brandon Foster was gone. But the shadow he cast lingered in the quiet corners of my life. He was in a holding cell, awaiting trial, his arrogance stripped away by the reality of iron bars and federal charges. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt free. Instead, I felt adrift. The threat that had defined my existence for 2 weeks, and my fear for 6 months before that, had vanished, leaving a void that needed filling. And the only thing large enough to fill it was the complicated, dangerous, and utterly captivating man who had engineered my freedom. But Nicholas Verziani was pulling away. It wasn't abrupt. It wasn't cruel. It was a slow, deliberate retreat. He stopped coming to the Brooklyn apartment unannounced. His texts became sporadic, strictly logistical. Joseph remained my constant shadow, but Nicholas became a ghost. He's busy, Joseph would say when I asked, his eyes fixed on the road. Business was neglected. He has fires to put out. I knew it was a lie, or at least a convenient half-truth. Nicholas wasn't just busy. He was creating distance. He was building the wall back up, brick by brick, now that I was no longer a damsel in distress who needed saving. But I wasn't the same woman who had fallen onto those tracks. I had seen behind the curtain. I had seen the man who read poetry and cooked risotto and bled on my sofa at 3 a.m., and I wasn't going to let him disappear without a fight. On a Thursday evening, a week after Brandon's arrest, Nicholas finally called. I am downstairs, he said, his voice sounding tinny through the speaker. Come down. We are going somewhere. Where? I asked, heart leaping despite myself. Dinner and a talk. The phrase "we need to talk" is universally terrifying, whether it comes from a boyfriend, a boss, or a mafia don. I dressed carefully. Jeans, a silk blouse, the leather jacket he had bought me. Armor. He was waiting by the silver coupe again. He looked tired but impeccable. The perfect mask of the businessman. He opened my door without a word. Where are we going? I asked again as he merged into traffic. There is a place my family owns in Queens, he said. Quiet. Private. The drive was silent. Not the comfortable silence we had shared before, but a heavy, loaded silence. The air in the car felt thick with unsaid words. The restaurant was small, tucked away on a side street that smelled of salt water and rain. The sign above the door just said, Verziani's, in faded gold letters. Inside, it was empty, save for an elderly man wiping down the bar, who nodded respectfully to Nicholas, but didn't approach. Nicholas led me to a table in the back corner. There were no menus. A bottle of red wine was already waiting. He poured 2 glasses, his movements precise. He took a sip, then set the glass down and looked at me. Brandon's plea hearing is set for next week, he said. He will accept the deal. 10 years, minimum. You will not have to testify. That's good, I said. Thank you. You are safe now, Megan. The O'Sullivans have backed off. Brandon is gone. The threat is neutralized. I know, I said, my throat tight. So what happens now? You send me back to my old life? I go back to my apartment, my job, and pretend none of this happened? You cannot go back to your apartment, he said. It is tainted. I have arranged for the lease to be broken. You can find a new place, anywhere you want. I will cover the costs for the first year. I don't want your money, I snapped. I have a job. I can pay my own rent. It is not charity, he said patiently. It is closure. Closure, I repeated. Is that what this is? You're closing the file? Case closed, victim saved, moving on? Nicholas looked away, his jaw tightening. It is not that simple. Then explain it to me, I demanded. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're running away. He looked back at me, and the raw honesty in his eyes took my breath away. I am running away, he admitted. Because if I stay, I will destroy you. That's a cliché, Nicholas. I'm bad for you. I'm dangerous, blah, blah, blah. I know who you are. I know what you do. I've been living in it for weeks. Living in the fringes, he corrected. You have seen the safe house, the bodyguards. You have not seen the reality. You have not seen the violence, Megan. Not really. You saw me punch a man. You saw a cut on my hand. You have not seen what I have to do to keep this city under control. So show me, I challenged. No, the word was a gunshot. I will not drag you into the mud with me. You are light. You are healing. You save lives. I take them. We are not compatible. Since when do you care about compatibility? I asked. You cared about saving me. You cared about protecting me. You cared enough to kiss me. Twice. And that was a mistake, he said harshly. A moment of weakness. Was it? I reached across the table, covering his hand with mine. He flinched but didn't pull away, because it didn't feel like weakness to me. It felt like the only real thing that's happened in a long time. Megan, he warned, his voice dropping. Do not push this. You have a chance now. A fresh start. You can find a nice man. A doctor. Someone who comes home at 5 p.m. and doesn't check his car for bombs. I don't want a nice man, I said fiercely. I tried nice. Brandon was nice, remember? He brought me flowers. He opened doors. And then he pushed me onto a subway track. Nice is a lie. I want real. And you are the most real thing I've ever known. Nicholas stared at our joined hands. You think you want this, but you do not know the cost. You will be isolated. You will be judged. Your friends will leave you. Your family, your mother has already judged you for less. My mother judged me for being a victim, I said, for staying with a man who hurt me. But with you, I'm not a victim. I'm not weak. You make me feel strong, Nicholas. You make me feel like I can handle anything. Even the blood, he asked quietly. Even the nights I don't come home? Even the knowledge that every meal we eat, every dress you wear is paid for with dirty money? Is it? I asked. Or is it paid for by keeping monsters like Brandon off the street? By keeping the O'Sullivans from hurting more people? I'm not naive, Nicholas. I know you're not Robin Hood, but I also know you have a code. And I can live with that code. He pulled his hand away, standing up abruptly. He paced to the window, looking out at the rainy street. My father, he began, his back to me. He wanted me to be a lawyer. He wanted me to be legitimate. He sent me to the best schools. He tried to keep me out of this life, but when he died, there was no one else. The family needed a leader, so I stepped up. I became what they needed, and I lost myself in the process. He turned to face me. I have not let anyone in, Megan. Not in 10 years. Because everyone I let in becomes a target, or a casualty. I'm already a target, I pointed out, standing up and moving toward him. Brandon made me one. The O'Sullivans made me one. You didn't do that. You saved me from it. And if the next enemy is smarter? He asked. If they don't send flowers? If they just put a bullet in your head while you are walking to work? Then I die, I said simply. We all die, Nicholas. I could have died on those tracks 3 weeks ago. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. I'm not going to live my life in fear of what might happen. I want to live it with the person I choose, and I choose you. Nicholas looked at me with a mixture of wonder and terror. He reached out, his hand hovering near my face before finally settling on my cheek. You are stubborn, he whispered. I'm a nurse. I smiled weakly. Stubbornness is a job requirement. If I let you stay, he said, his thumb stroking my skin. If we do this, there is no going back. You are mine. Fully. Publicly. There will be no hiding in safe houses. You will be by my side. And that paints a target on your back that will never wash off. I know, I said. I'm ready. He searched my eyes for a long moment, looking for doubt, for fear. Finding none, he let out a long, shuddering breath. Okay, he said. Okay. He kissed me then, and it wasn't like the other times. It wasn't desperate or hesitant. It was a seal, a contract written in breath and touch. He kissed me like he was drowning and I was air. We will take it slow, he murmured against my lips. We will be careful. We'll be us, I promised. We left the restaurant hand in hand. The old man at the bar nodded as we passed, a knowing glint in his eye. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean. Come home with me, Nicholas said as we reached the car. Not to the safe house, to my home, the penthouse. Are you sure? I asked. I am done hiding you, he said. If you are in this, you are in all the way. We drove back to Manhattan. But this time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was companionable, filled with possibility. When we walked into the penthouse, it felt different. Less like a museum, more like a home waiting to be lived in. Nicholas led me to the window, looking out at the city lights. This is my world, he said, gesturing to the sprawl below. It is ugly. It is dangerous. But it is mine. And now, it is yours too. I stood beside him, looking out. I saw the lights. I saw the shadows. But I didn't feel afraid. I felt grounded. I can handle it, I said. I know, he said, wrapping an arm around my waist. That is what scares me most. We stood there for a long time, watching the city breathe. I knew there would be challenges. I knew people would judge. I knew there would be danger. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from the fire. I was standing in it, holding the hand of the man who controlled the flames. And I wasn't going to get burned. Later that night, as we lay in his massive bed, the city humming outside, Nicholas turned to me. Your mother, he said softly. You should write to her again. Why? I asked, tracing the scar on his shoulder. Because you are happy, he said. And she deserves to know that her daughter survived. Not just the train, but the life she tried to escape. I will, I promised. Tomorrow, he agreed. And for the first time, tomorrow didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a promise. Brandon Foster's plea deal was the period at the end of a very long, very violent sentence. When Joseph texted me the news, guilty on all counts, sentencing in 6 weeks, I was sitting in the break room at the hospital, staring at a cup of lukewarm coffee. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel a rush of adrenaline. Instead, I just felt light. Like I had been carrying a backpack full of stones for years and someone had finally cut the straps. But as the relief settled, a new reality began to take shape. I wasn't just Megan Collins, trauma nurse, anymore. I was Megan Collins, girlfriend of Nicholas Versiani. And that title came with its own set of weights. Nicholas had kept his promise. We weren't hiding. We were cautious. Joseph was still a fixture in my life, and the new apartment Nicholas had helped me find in Tribeca had security that rivaled the Pentagon. But we were together, publicly. It was a Saturday night, 3 weeks after our dinner at Versiani's. We were at a gala for a children's hospital charity, an event Nicholas had donated heavily to. I wore a dress that felt illegal, emerald green silk that draped over my body like water, with a slit that went dangerously high. Nicholas looked like he had stepped out of a noir film, all sharp angles and dangerous elegance in a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. You look terrified, he murmured in my ear as we walked into the ballroom. Cameras flashed, blinding white bursts that left spots in my vision. I'm not terrified, I lied, gripping his arm tighter. I'm just adjusting. To the cameras? Or the company? Both, I admitted. We moved through the crowd, Nicholas guiding me with a hand on the small of my back, People looked. Of course they looked. They looked at him with a mix of fear and respect. And they looked at me with curiosity. Who is she? Their eyes asked. Is she a trophy? A liability? A temporary distraction? I held my head high, channeling every ounce of stubbornness I possessed. I wasn't a trophy. I was the woman who had survived Brandon Foster. I could survive a few judgmental stares from socialites. Nicholas! A man in a politician's suit approached us, smile wide and fake. Good to see you. And this must be... Megan, Nicholas said, cutting him off smoothly. Megan Collins, my partner. Partner. Not girlfriend, not date. Partner. The word settled in my chest, warm and solid. Charmed. The man said, not looking charmed at all. I heard about the unpleasantness with the O'Sullivans. Glad to see it resolved. Business is always resolved eventually, Nicholas said, his tone polite but final. Excuse us, I promised Megan a drink. He steered me toward the bar, away from the sharks. You handled that well, he said. I didn't say anything. Exactly. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. We got drinks. Champagne for me, sparkling water for him, and found a quiet corner. I watched him scan the room, his eyes never resting, always assessing threats. It was exhausting just watching him do it. Do you ever turn it off? I asked softly. Turn what off? The radar. The constant threat assessment. Do you ever just exist? He looked at me, and for a second, the vigilance softened. With you, he said. When we are alone. That is the only time. That's a lot of pressure on me. I teased gently. You can handle it, he said. You handle blood and trauma every day. Compared to that, my neuroses are a vacation. We laughed. A private moment in a public room. But then I saw something that made my smile falter. Across the ballroom, near the exit, a man was watching us. He wasn't dressed for a gala. He wore a cheap suit that fit poorly. He stood out like a sore thumb. And he was staring directly at Nicholas with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. Nicholas, I whispered, touching his arm. 3 o'clock, by the exit. Gray suit. Nicholas didn't turn immediately. He checked his reflection in a mirrored pillar, then stiffened imperceptibly. Stay here, he said, his voice dropping to that cold, professional tone I knew too well. Do not move. Nicholas, Joseph is 5 feet away to your left. Stay here. He walked away from me, moving through the crowd with lethal grace. I watched him approach the man. They spoke. It didn't look friendly. The man gestured angrily. Nicholas stepped closer, invading his space, saying something low and undoubtedly terrifying. The man paled, took a step back, and then turned and practically ran out the door. Nicholas returned to me, smoothing his jacket. Who was that? I asked, heart racing. Nobody, Nicholas said. Just a ghost from an old business deal. He looked like he wanted to kill you. Many people want to kill me, Megan. It is a long list. But wanting and doing are very different things. Is that going to happen every time we go out? I asked, the reality of it hitting me again. The threats? The enemies? Not every time, he said honestly. But sometimes. Yes. He took my hand, his thumb rubbing over my knuckles. This is the life, Megan. I told you. It is not safe. It is not clean. If you want to walk away, the door is there. I will not stop you. I looked at the door. Then I looked at the man in the gray suit fleeing into the night. Then I looked at Nicholas. I'm not walking away, I said. I'm staying right here. Why? He asked, genuinely baffled. Why choose this? Because I choose you, I said. And you come with baggage, heavy, dangerous baggage. But you also come with this. I squeezed his hand. With loyalty, with protection, with love? I said the word as a question, testing the waters. We hadn't said it yet. Not out loud. Nicholas looked at me, his dark eyes intense. Yes, he whispered. With love. He didn't kiss me then. Too public, too risky. But he didn't have to. The look on his face said everything. We left early. Joseph drove us back to the penthouse. The ride was quiet, but it wasn't tense. It was the comfortable silence of two people who had fought a battle and won. At least for today. When we got inside, Nicholas didn't turn on the lights. We stood by the window, looking out at the city. "I have something for you," he said suddenly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. "It is not a ring," he said quickly, seeing my face. "Not yet. That comes later, if you still want to be here." He opened the box. Inside was a necklace, a simple, elegant silver chain with a small pendant. A phoenix, rising from the ashes, he murmured, taking it out. "Turn around." I turned, lifting my hair. His fingers brushed my neck, warm and calloused, as he fastened the clasp. "You survived the fire, Megan," he said, his breath against my ear. "Brandon tried to burn you down, but you rose. You are stronger now." "We survived," I corrected, turning back to face him. I touched the pendant, the metal cool against my skin. We both did. He looked at me with such fierce emotion that I felt like I was standing in the sun. "You saved me, Megan. I pulled you off the tracks, yes, but you pulled me out of the dark. I was drowning in this life, and then you fell into it, and suddenly, there was air. We saved each other," I whispered. He kissed me then, deep and slow, a promise sealed in the quiet of his fortress. Later, as we lay in bed, the city lights casting long shadows across the room, I thought about the letter to my mother. I still hadn't mailed it. It was sitting on the dresser, a white rectangle of unfinished business. "Nicholas?" I asked into the darkness. I'm going to mail the letter tomorrow." He shifted, propping himself up on one elbow to look down at me. "Good. And I think I'm going to add a postscript." "Oh? Yeah. I'm going to tell her I met someone. Someone dangerous. Someone complicated. Someone who jumps in front of trains for strangers." Nicholas smiled, tracing the line of my jaw. "She will love that." "She'll hate it." I laughed softly. "But that's okay. Because I love it. I love you," he said, the words clear and strong in the darkness. "I love you too," I replied. And as I closed my eyes, drifting into sleep in the arms of the most dangerous man in New York, I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Brandon, not of the O'Sullivans, not of the judgment, or the danger, or the future. For the first time, when I pictured border crossings and triage tents and a younger version of myself in a Doctors Without Borders vest, the image didn't feel like a fantasy I had to give up to stay alive. It felt like something I might actually get to choose, someday, on my own terms. I was Megan Collins. I was a survivor. I was a partner. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The tracks were behind me. The train had passed. And for the first time in a very long time, the track ahead was clear. The next morning, I woke up alone in the massive bed, but there was a note on the pillow next to me. "Gone to handle business. Joseph is downstairs. Be ready at 7 for dinner. Wear the red dress. I love you. N." I smiled, stretching. I got up, showered, and dressed. I picked up the letter to my mother. I grabbed a pen and added the postscript. "P.S. I met someone. He's not what you would choose for me. He's not safe. He's not normal. But he saved my life. And more importantly, he let me save myself. I'm happy, Mom. Really happy. I hope one day you can be happy for me too." I sealed the envelope. I walked downstairs, past Joseph, who nodded a greeting, and out onto the sidewalk. The sun was shining. The city was loud and chaotic and beautiful. I dropped the letter in the mailbox on the corner. It clattered down, a sound of finality. I turned back toward the building, toward the black SUV waiting to take me to work, toward the dangerous, complicated, wonderful life I had chosen. I touched the phoenix at my throat. I was ready for whatever came next.